Welcome everyone to Kowalski Analysis. This is episode 77. Been very consistent the last couple of weeks. I hope you all are enjoying it. Very proud of myself. And this is a podcast designed to help you navigate the weight and become the best version of you. I'm your host, Rob Kowalski. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hey, before we get into it, we have a great guest, by the way. But before we get into it, I just want to encourage everyone to say hi, hey, or hello, and drop your location in the comments. Why? Because we are collecting everyone's cities and we are actually putting them together. We're introducing them to other people that are living in their areas. And we have found people in clusters of cities all over the country, even some internationally. And I'll just give you an idea of where we found people. We've found people in Atlanta, Aurora, Illinois, Austin, Baltimore, Birmingham, Brisbane, Australia, Charlotte, Chicago, Orlando, Columbus, Dallas, DC, Washington, DC, Frederick, Maryland, Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Kansas City, Missouri, Las Vegas, Lexington, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Nashville, New York City, Oklahoma City, Orlando, Pittsburgh, Raleigh, Roanoke, San Antonio, San Diego, Seattle, South Florida, St. Louis, Sydney, Australia, Tampa, Tucson, Tulsa, Virginia Beach, and Richmond, Virginia. So that's at least like 3 or 4 people in all those cities that we've identified, and we've put them into Facebook Messenger groups with each other. Some of these groups are actually getting started. They're putting events on the calendar. They're going to be doing life together, just like we do it here in Baltimore. And it's awesome. We really believe this is the beginning of a great movement. So if you want to be part of it, it's a social revolution. Drop your city in the comments and I will make sure to reach out to you and we'll add you to our spreadsheet, possibly add you to one of those groups. All right, let's get into it. So tonight's guest is Dawn Masler, aka the Love Biologist. So she was one of my first guests on this podcast when I started out, and she's endorsed my book. I reference her TED Talk video a lot, How Your Brain Falls in Love. I encourage everyone to go watch it. It's got like 5 million plus views on YouTube, but she's an author. She's a TEDx speaker, and she's a researcher in the science of love. She wrote the internationally best-selling book, Men Chase, Women Choose, and has recently started a YouTube channel. Check this out, titled, Is He Committed? Where the man's saliva is analyzed to determine if he is committed to a woman. They can actually test and tell if you're a cheater by your saliva. Is this crazy? We're going to talk about this. So anyway, that's tonight's guest. So drop that comment and let's bring Dawn in now. Hey, Dawn.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
Good. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
You were one of my first guests when I was trying to get this off the ground, so I appreciate you coming back.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about this this new YouTube channel of yours. So yeah, before we get into it, let's just tell everybody a little bit about you. Actually, you know what? Before we dive into the conversation, I do a little segment called This or That. It's where I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, and you're just going to say this or that, and so the audience can get to know you a little bit. You ready to do it?
Okay.
All right. Dark chocolate or white chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
Okay. Dinner out or breakfast in bed?
Breakfast in bed.
Okay. Good movie or binge watch a Netflix series?
Binge watching.
Okay. Beachside resort or hillside cottage?
I live at the beach, so I'm kind of the beach.
You're a beach girl. Okay. Board games or card games?
Oh, so that could be like very similar, right? Because there's board games that include cards.
That's true. But if you had to pick, I guess, yeah, right. So you would pick a board game with cards.
Possibly, but we do, so I play a game. We played Mexican Train, which is actually dominoes. So it's neither of those. That's more probably my favorite game.
It's what's the name of it again?
Mexican Train.
Mexican Train. I'll have to Google that. I'm gonna write it down. Okay. So welcome back. Let's just tell everybody a little bit about who you are. I guess my first question is, what really inspired you to get into this kind of study? Like, what was it that made you want to become a love biologist?
Bad relationships. I had a bad picker.
Broken picker.
I had a bad picker. I was like attracted to the wrong guys, you know.
Bad boys?
I did the motorcycle, you know, that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my first book was A Broken Picker Fixer, because I actually started I have a weird convoluted path. So I started writing a magazine in an article for a magazine. It was a biker magazine, Why Women Are Attracted to the Worst Men.
Hmm.
So it was like this unrequited love that I was writing about in this magazine. And the sad part was I was like reading it and I'm looking at it going, oh, this is kind of really sad, because I'm always failing in this, as I'm going on. And I decided to do some work on myself. And that's where the Broken Picker came from. But by trade, I'm a biologist. My degree is in biology. I'm a biology professor. So I really wanted to understand the science of it. And I've read all the books and, from different, a lot of comedians wrote relationships books.
Steve Harvey and all that.
Exactly. He's Just Not Into You. He was a comedian also.
Okay.
So I read all those books. I read the rules, all that stuff. And I was like, those were all people's opinions, but what was the science? What's the biology behind it? So I started researching, and it actually consumed like 5 years of my life, like diving into this research.
Did it change like the men that you were choosing to go out with, or were you still drawn to the bad boy?
I had changed the bad boy prior to that research. So I was in a relationship, and I wanted to know how to keep this relationship, how to maintain a long-term relationship.
Okay.
Excuse me. So that now I'm married to that man. So,
yeah. Last time you were on, I think you were just engaged.
Yeah.
But when I met you in Florida at that event, I bought that book, The Broken Picker Fixer, for an ex-girlfriend of mine, because I figured she chose me, so she must have a broken picker.
She needs it, right?
So, it's funny because like when you think about love, it doesn't seem very romantic to like think about the science behind it. What would you say to that?
Oh, I got a lot of pushback about that. And people are like, you can't quantify love. It's not in a test tube. One of the things that when we first started, you talked about the YouTube channel, and it's a commitment test. And a lot of people do not like that whole idea. They're like, it should be more romantic. What do you mean?
You think?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm surprised you're still alive. Like, honestly, there's going to be some powerful man that's going to be like, whack you, because if you can test a man's faithfulness based off of saliva, I'm like, that's you're going to get some people in some big trouble.
Well, the cool part about it is the man has to give me his saliva, so I can't do it serendipitously.
Okay. Why is that? Because it's legally?
No, unless he's laying on his side drooling, and then I can, but I have to get enough spit.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was something where, somehow if he doesn't give it, it changes the breakdown of it or so. Okay. So it's basically just need enough of it. So if a woman was able to capture it and bring it to you, now what percentage of this is accurate? Is it like 100%, or how accurate is it?
So far it's about 95%.
Wow. So
it's pretty easy because it's based on the what's happening in the body. And if a man, you're basically looking to see if a man is in what we call pursuit mode. So his body amps up for pursuit mode. Now he may be a cheater, like, you could have the world's biggest cad, but if he is not in pursuit mode at the moment, he looks like he's committed.
What are the hormones that you're reading? Is it testosterone, or what is it?
Well, it's actually IP, so I can't really discuss it too much, but it's we're looking at a pattern.
Okay.
I can tell you that, a hormonal pattern. Yes.
Got it. So, yeah. I mean, when you just mentioned pursuit mode, it made me think of, so I was a cheater, in multiple relationships. And, I always kept a mental Rolodex of women that I was going to date and or sleep with when we broke up. Like, that was always the thought process. It was like, well, one day I'm not going to be like, so I guess I was, even when I wasn't cheating, I was still kind of recording, remembering girls that I wanted to sleep with eventually. I mean, as bad as that sounds, but that is the truth.
Yeah, your plan B. A lot of people have the plan B.
Right. And this is why I tell women when a man doesn't commit, is because he wants to keep that option open. Someone better may come along, and you're like, the opportunity to sleep with, date and or sleep with other people in the future, which is again why marriage works so well. And I don't know how many people I've told about your TED talk, and I've wrote, referenced it in the book, but it's all about, the oxytocin release when when we commit, not when we have sex. And it's, I can say in my own life, 100% that's accurate. Like, and when it's done out of balance, and we talked about this, is it creates a bad dynamic for both people, because the man might be in more control, like where the woman's now kind of off balance because she's emotionally connected. But then what happens is, a lot of time, at least for me, I would feel obligated to commit at some point, but it wasn't because I was in love with the girl. It was because I felt like I owed it to her.
Oh, right.
Because
right.
she was giving me sex, and I was playing the non-committal role for a while. And then eventually so I'd be curious to hear about this test. Like, so obviously women, so the men gave it. Was there men that were like, definitely I'm not cheating? They gave the saliva, it came back positive that they were, and then the women were like, what's up? Well, like almost like Maury Povich. You are not the father.
Right. Well, I'm still early on. I'm just started the YouTube channel.
Okay.
So basically I have, you can see the one recording of the one couple, and he's like, I know I'm committed. I just hope that he was worried that the test was going to show that he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I just wanted to validate what I feel. So that's the kind of people I tend to get right now, because it is one of those things where the man has to say, yes, I'll give the sample.
So has it came back though, where, he says he's committed and then he comes back that he's in pursuit mode? Does that happen?
Not, I haven't had that yet.
Okay.
I did have one guy who came back that said he was not committed, and it came back committed, which was funny. So you're more likely to get, like I said, you have to be in active pursuit. Right. So even though the guy wasn't committed, he didn't have any other options at the time. So right. He wasn't showing as not committed. Wow.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, if you can get it to the point where it can become like almost like a home pregnancy test, where you could just take it home, and like, that's going to be super popular. I want to get in on the IPO for that.
Well, we're patent pending.
If it goes public, don't forget about me.
We're going to say a little prayer for the patent office.
So let's just quickly, how does your brain fall in love? Just real, basic question. I know you got a long video out about it, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but how does your brain fall in love, if you could sum it up?
Well, it's different for men and for women. So it's a combination of, for women, it's a combination of oxytocin and dopamine, which build up. It's kind of, the analogy is kind of like a roller coaster ride, that you're going up, and then all of a sudden you get over the top and you get that whoosh down, and that's falling in love. So the first part is the buildup. So you have to have the buildup of the oxytocin and the dopamine. And sometimes it builds up slowly and sometimes more quickly. So when a woman has sex right away, she can get a lot of oxytocin, and it builds up really quick, and she can fall in love quickly. Now, a man's a little bit different. His is still dopamine, but then it's vasopressin, which is kind of a weird hormone. It's also called antidiuretic hormone because it functions through the kidneys, but nature doesn't like to waste energy. So she doesn't have just one hormone for love. So she double dips on it. So this one, a man gets excited when he's looking for sex. When he wants to have sex, he's sexually excited, it builds up. But as soon as he's satiated and he has sex, it drops. So if he has sex too early, it can drop too quickly, and the dopamine can also drop, and then he may never fall in love with that person because it's already it's kind of over for him. He's not feeling it. He lost that loving feeling.
There wasn't enough buildup.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah. Wow.
Now it can build up really quickly for a man too, especially if he thinks she's out of his league.
Mm.
So if he's
So
like,
even if you
wow,
even if you have sex with a girl quickly, that like maybe she's like, there's no chance I'm doing better than this, you could still fall in love. And when I say, because you said she could fall in love, and I'm like, but sometimes, like if a woman has sex quickly with a man, is she really in love, or does she just have the feelings of love because of the
okay,
oxytocin release?
that's a great question. So when I'm talking about falling in love, I'm talking about a specific biological state that we
Got it.
can actually see in the lab. We can see fMRI, functioning magnetic resonance imaging of what happens to your brain. Your serotonin level drops. You have deactivation of the frontal cortex. You have deactivation of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. We see some activity in your parietal lobes that look like cocaine. So it's like, is love an addiction like a drug? It looks like it. It really
Wow.
does. So we see these, there's definitely these parameters, and that's what I'm talking about falling in love. I'm not talking about like, oh, I think I love them or that. I'm talking about the actual
Science.
manifestation of it. Yep.
Yeah. So you had said that love is actually a form of temporary insanity. What do you mean by that?
That's because of the deactivation of, well, we lose part of the amygdala,
Mm-hmm.
which is the part of the brain that sounds a warning. So so when that is deactivated, you're doing really dumb things, and not because you don't realize it's dumb. It's like, oh, that's
I found
okay.
a
I'll
woman's
go down.
I found a woman's panties in his bed, but he said it was his mom, so I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he's got a ski cap and a shot off shotgun in the trunk, but he's like doing winter deer hunting. He's like cool with it,
So is that why we find like good love stories so like irresistible?
Why do we like good love stories?
Yeah, like why do we think we find good love stories so irresistible? Is it because of that? Is it just biology?
Well, love is a natural requirement, or a natural requirement. There's a baby that is if you have a newborn baby and you put it in an incubator and you can give it food, oxygen, medicine, all the things it needs, but it doesn't have love, that baby can still die, more likely die. So that's one of the reasons why they created the sleeves in those incubators, so you can touch the baby when they're in the incubators, because they would die. They were having a number of, the study found that poor hospitals had less deaths, and if the rich ones that had the incubators were having more deaths. And they were like, why would that be? Well, it turned out because they didn't have an incubator, the nurse would hold the child, so the child felt love.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of our strongest natural desires, our strongest biological desires. So that's, I think, why we find them irresistible, because we all want love.
Right.
We need it.
You had mentioned something called the 4 phases of love. What are those?
So the first one is not really love at all. It's just attraction. So I wanted to break down what's happening with you. So the first is attraction. And the funny part is that attraction is really more like fear. It's it has the biological equivalency of fear. So we feel the fluttering heart, the sweaty palms, the dilated pupils. That's the same feeling you get if a masked gunman walks into the room. So it's based on that. So that is not, it has nothing biologically to do with love. The next one is, I talk about as like dating, but that's where the buildup I was talking about, when you're building up your oxytocin, your dopamine, and men, vasopressin and dopamine. And then the third one is when we actually fall in love. That's where we see the changes in the brain, changes in the hormones. And then the fourth one is actually long-term love. And the interesting part about that is you don't have to go through any of the first 3 phases to actually get to long-term love. All you have to do is make the decision. And in our brain, it looks completely different. So where we saw no or deactivation in the beginning, when we're falling in love, we see activation in the frontal cortex, where it shares neurons with commitment, morals, brotherly love. So it's a healthy love. And then we also see a brain pattern. Like, remember I told you we had cocaine when we fell in love? Well, now we see it in the back in the opioid receptors. So it's more like heroin. It's that mellow, nice, long-term. People that are in loving relationships live longer. They're healthier.
Huh. For whatever reason, I just thought of Johnny Cash. Did you ever see the movie Walk the Line?
Yes.
And he was just a hot mess. Remember when he was like, he liked her, he was all over the place doing drugs, acting all crazy. And then of course she settled him down. He fell in love. Anyway, I'm like, sounds a lot like what you just said. So you say it's a decision. So, I mean, I've heard people say this a lot. Love is a choice, you know, and I'm like, okay, well then why don't you just go choose to love the next person you meet? Right. But it starts with a feeling, right? Somebody that you're attracted to, or maybe you want to be with, desire. But then, yeah, after it becomes a choice, after you make that commitment, it becomes a choice because feelings change, right? So is that what you mean? You just make the choice to. Hey, Rob Kowalski here. When I first got serious about living intentionally and becoming a better version of myself, I found a major shortage of things to do and people to do them with. And it was the loneliness and boredom that led me to starting CityFam. So I just want to take a moment right now and encourage you to go over and join the CityFam Facebook community. It's a free Facebook group, and in it you'll find purpose-driven people from all over the world that want to enjoy life to the fullest. You can search it on Facebook, or you can go to www.friendswithbetterbenefits.com and it'll take you right there. While I'm mentioning it, if you're single, searching for real love before sex, as I like to say, I want to encourage you to join the Waiting Works community. That's another free Facebook group I put together designed to help people wait well, date well, and ultimately hit the mark in life and love. You can go to www.reallovewaits.com and I'll see you over there. Now back to the episode. No,
it doesn't. You don't have to have one feeling. All you have to do is make a decision. And that's one of the reasons why oftentimes arranged marriages work, because they go, okay, I'm supposed to be with this person. I'm going to make the commitment to be with them. And as long as you're mentally maintaining that commitment, we see that as love in your brain.
Right. That's interesting.
Have you ever I watched the show Married at First Sight.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of it.
And I was kind of, just watching it like, this is kind of silly. But then I realized that some of the people actually stayed in the relationships. They were married at first sight, and they had a real marriage, a real relationship. And that's what I'm talking about. That it seems crazy, but you can do that because they were both ready to be in a relationship. And and as long as the other person met the parameters that they were looking for, they were all in.
Right.
And so they made the commitment to be in love. They didn't go through the other phases.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've wondered that in my own life because I'm really motivated to settle down. I want to be married. I'm going to be turning 50 in 4 months. And I was like, it'd be awesome to meet a woman and marry like right around then and go, boom, go away on my honeymoon for my 50th birthday. I'm like, I know that's fast, but Jackie Dorman, actually, I don't know if you know her, but she says that that's actually consistent with all the long successful marriages people she's interviewed. They all met and married within 4 months. So I'm like, well, I guess it could happen. But I thought that even like, for me, it seems a little risky, but I'm so ready. I feel like I'm so ready to just do it that if I make the commitment, I'm like, there ain't going to be no divorce. We're going to make it work. So it really is a matter of just flipping the switch. Sounds like.
It is. It can be that simple, because like you said, you're ready. You're preparing for this mentally. So basically all you need is that person to show up. And if that person's on the same page, it's going to click.
Right. And I think this is why it's so dangerous to have the sex, casual sex, or not even casual sex, just sex quickly, because a lot of times the man, at least speaking from personal experience, I was in pursuit mode. I wasn't in relationship, looking for a relationship mode. I was not looking for a relationship. Actually, I actually drifted into them inadvertently, but then I always felt trapped. So that's the big difference, because if someone is willing to wait, man or woman, there's a reason. Because they're looking for a relationship. They're not looking for sex. So that's why I think it works so well. What would you say about love at first sight? Is that real?
Well, no, because I just told you that attraction is based on fear.
Right.
So you got that norepinephrine. That's what's causing that feeling of attraction. So unfortunately, some people will think that's love at first sight, and then they try to make a relationship. And the problem is that is a temporary response. So your body it'll calm back down. So what do you do to get that feeling back? You end up being in dramatic relationships.
Mm.
So the classic one is, I mean, it's on Netflix now, is Tommy and Pamela.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Perfect example.
Exactly. So they were constantly on again, off again. He spent like the last 4 months of their marriage in county jail because of domestic violence.
Oh gosh. So let's talk about like common mistakes that men and women make. What would you say are like some?
Well, that was my common mistake, and that's why the whole broken picker thing was. I was attracted. I was like love at first sight. I spot him across the room. I'm like, that's the one, and like she was like this like crazy, animalistic relationship for a week
Right.
or something, and then it was like you end up going, you don't even like the person, you start realizing who they are, and you try to make it fit, and then it's like this uncomfortable kind of relationship. And I never took the time to get to know someone first.
Right. Sure.
So that became the challenge. And first of all, I had to know me first. And that's another mistake, because you if you don't know what you want, you're never going to find it.
That's great.
So you have to figure out what you want in a relationship. So one of the examples I had was a woman who, she was all upset. She called me up. I was doing date coaching at the time, and she fell in love with this guy, and he was a boat captain. And she said, I love him. I adore him, but he's gone 6 months out of the year. And I said, well, is that something you want in a relationship? She said, no, I want somebody that comes home every night. And I'm like, well, then you need to find someone who comes home every night.
Right.
You can't take this poor man and make him change his job.
Right.
To fit
Right.
you.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things, so we had a course, 13-week program for people that wanted to be married. And one of the things we had Adam do was really get specific about what they're looking for, and then ultimately you want to become the person that a person like that would want, that's one step. But even I had Trip Advice on the podcast. He's like a pickup artist, but he talked about like even having just 3 non-negotiables, like 3 things that you definitely want, and not like trustworthy, because that's of course, right. Or like my parents. Well, of course,
but can't be married. We know that.
Right. So, but yeah, really, I guess I had them, and but I hadn't been I haven't really didn't get really clear. I guess they were kind of vague before, but after talking to him, I really got clear, and I was like, okay, gotta love Jesus, gotta be waiting, or at least willing to wait, and then politically conservative. Those are my 3, because I'm like, I could never marry a liberal. Like we wouldn't, we don't see the world the same way. But those were my 3. So when you met your husband, did you have a list, or did you have like just a short 3 non-negotiables, or what was your list like?
I had 5 and 5. So my program, I guess, or whatever, is I have 5 must-haves and then 5 deal breakers. So
you want to share what they are? Yeah.
Well, we've been together for 15 years. I'm trying to think. It was well, he had to be fiscally responsible. So there was one guy I dated who was like, called me up, and he said that he just lost his house where he lived. He just got evicted. And I was like, okay, that's number 1. Be responsible. I think it was, I can't really remember. Didn't do drugs was another one. That was a big one.
Right.
He had to be visually appealing.
That's good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I have a type. So
yeah.
I it's like the dark hair mustache type I usually have. Kind of like you. So you would be in my type.
Thank you. Flattered. So anything else?
No, I mean, I can't remember them. It was a while ago, but that was pretty much it.
So you would say for women, some of the mistakes that they make is not is just being drawn to somebody like very carnally, almost very animalistically, and then not getting to know them before, getting physical, or is that the mistake you're saying?
Well, they go by the initial response, which
Yeah.
is the feeling of attraction,
Right.
and not waiting it out. So the big deal is, instead of just jumping into a relationship, get to know the person first.
Mhm.
And it changes. And so a lot of times I get these women are like, oh, I met him, he was wonderful, it was the greatest thing. And then they jumped into a relationship, and like you, they kind of feel obligated now. Like they're trying to make this relationship work, which would have never worked if they had taken the time just to get to know him.
Are there any differences between men and women as far as mistakes? Are the mistakes that men are making that women aren't generally making, or vice versa? Or are we pretty much all doing the same things wrong?
Well, we're actually very different biologically. We don't like to think that, what we are. So women are attracted to we're attracted to the five senses. So our attraction is more complex. Men, it's a little bit easier because they have 25% more neurons in the visual cortex. So they're more visually attracted. So a mistake a woman may make is that they would go, well, I just want him to love me without having to like be that attractive. And
Right.
it's like, well, he's never going to get to the point to get to know you, because you're using that as a block, as a barrier. So if you take a little bit of time to enhance your attractiveness, then you're going to you're going to find the guy that's going to not really worry about the attractiveness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, and I want to say I was reading something of yours where you talked about men have a lot more of something that makes us more visually.
25% more neurons in the visual cortex.
Okay, that's it right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to attraction, you're more visually attracted, where the female actually is the five senses. So the sound, the smell, the taste. She's really she needs to almost kind of get to know you, to smell you. We have something called major histocompatibility complex, which is actually part of our immune system. And we're more sexually attracted to people of opposite immune systems, which makes sense, because if we have children, they'd have a better complement of immune cells, and it would have healthier children.
How
If
are we
you're more
detecting that? Through smells or?
through your
Okay,
nose,
gotcha.
not
And you don't even know
necessarily.
what's going on.
Nope.
Right. Huh.
So it's not necessarily a nose. Your nose does a lot. Like men, you guys are, when a woman ovulates, you're like, what's that? Something walking in the room.
Wow.
There's a thing called copulins, which is the hormone that is produced during ovulation. This can be detected by the nose. Doesn't have a scent, doesn't have anything, but you do it, it'll actually raise your testosterone. So you're like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good today.
We're all animals. What do you think about these like pheromone colognes? Like, does that work if somebody put on, like, sprayed some of this stuff on? Can we attract women that way? Is that a real thing?
Well, I think, well, so women, I actually have had some copulins before, and I've like infused them in a wig, and I've done some experiments, and men are more attracted to the copulins.
Wow.
Women are actually attracted to a rise in testosterone.
Hmm.
So you're more likely to attract a woman right after the gym. You do a nice workout, just keep working out. Don't worry about that spray, because most of those are just kind of gimmicks.
I'd be more worried about the smell after my workout.
You can take a shower, but it's still going to,
Yeah.
testosterone is still going to be raised high, and it's still going to come out in your, your aura, your sweat.
Yeah. So your first, one of the books, and I think I bought this book too, was Men Chase, Women Choose.
Yes.
What?
Second.
Yeah. Just quickly explain that, because sometimes, I mean, I definitely see that, but then sometimes I see like the opposite too.
Well, women can chase, but so biologically speaking, if we look at all the species in the world, the males chase and the women choose.
Right.
So oftentimes, I mean, you see that where like peacocks, the male's walking around, he's like strutting himself, and the female, she didn't even have any colors. She's just sitting there going, I don't know, let me see number 2. So that we see that biologically when it comes to pretty much all species. I think the seahorse is a little bit different because the male carries the
eggs or the babies. Yeah.
Right. So so that's where that came from. Now we also see it biologically. So we see something like something I call the possum effect, where, you know, if a coyote goes chasing a possum, it would make sense that the possum would run. Why would the possum stop and fall over? And why wouldn't the coyote eat the possum?
I don't know why. Hey, Rob here, back with one more thing. When I first started down this way of life, I was super determined to not have premarital sex, even if it meant being alone and doing life by myself. But my desire for making positive changes quickly led to feelings of loneliness and boredom, to the point where I fell into a deep depression and I wasn't enjoying my life at all. It wasn't until years later when I backslid, hit rock bottom, and then rededicated, at which point I started working with life coaches, that things finally came into focus and I understood how the season of singleness was a blessing and how to use it to my advantage. Over the last 10 years, I formed an amazing process that's not only allowed me, but everyone I've shared it with, to become the absolute best version of themselves. And I want to do that same thing for you. I want to show you how to maximize the season of singleness, to discover a purpose and create a life that you couldn't even have dreamt of if you tried. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, go to my website, robbkowalski.com, click on the courses tab, and you'll see 2 courses there. One called the Proverbs 31 Blueprint for ladies, one called Unleash the Best You for men. Click on the one that's right for you and enter the code podcast to take 50% off for a limited time. Hope to see you on the inside. Now back to the episode.
Because there's a little part in his brain that goes, this is too easy, something's wrong, and he backs off. And I equate that to the relationship dating part. When a female makes it too easy, the guy goes, that's too easy, something's wrong. And there's a little part of his brain that has that doubt.
So good, Dawn. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. There's a chapter in my book called The More They Pay, the Longer They Stay. And when I was a nightclub promoter, it was the same thing where, you know, sometimes, like, let's say before 10 o'clock, we wouldn't have a cover because we were trying to get people to come in. But if you let people come in, a lot of times they would just walk in and they would look around and they would walk out and they would go to the next spot. But if you charge them $10, they wouldn't leave, even if it wasn't crowded. And I'm like, there's just a principle there that what we gain too easily, we esteem too lightly. If you give it up too easy, you know, don't wonder why they won't stick around. You know, it's like we want it, but somewhere deep down we want to work for it.
Well, there's also something called the Coolidge Effect. I told you this story, haven't I?
Yeah. There was the president.
Yes.
Go ahead, share it with everybody.
Okay, so President Calvin Coolidge was on a tour of the chicken farm, and he had his wife with him. Up ahead, they see this rooster, and the rooster's being quite amorous with this hen. And the wife had walked up ahead of him, and she was with the attendant, and she goes to the attendant, is that rooster like that all the time? And the attendant looks over and he's wooing the female, and he goes, oh yeah, he's like that all day, every day. She goes, oh, you have to show President Coolidge that. So the attendant goes back to the president and he goes, Mr. President, your wife wants me to point out this rooster. And they look over and he's being quite amorous with this hen. And he goes, I see, son. He goes, can you tell me something? Is he like that all the time? And the attendant says, yes, sir, all day, every day. And the president goes, tell me something else, son. Is it the same old hen every day? And
oh, he was in the doghouse that night.
No, the attendant goes, no, sir, it's a new hen every day. And he goes, now go run back and tell Mrs. Coolidge that.
That's hilarious.
And that's something we call the Coolidge effect. And we can actually see that in the lab. If I take a box of rats, female rats, and I throw a male in, he'll have his way with every female in the box until he's exhausted. And he'll fall over on the side and they can lick and try to entice him, but he won't do anything unless
a new one comes
throw in a new female.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
I would not kid you. Then his dopamine spikes and he's up and at him.
That's amazing.
and that's the dopamine effect, and that's the Coolidge effect, and that's based on just dopamine. So we know we have dopamine and vasopressin. So dopamine can go up and down rapidly. Vasopressin can do the same thing if it's satiated. So the thing is, to fall in love, it has to build up.
Right. How long does it take to build up? Is it different with different people, or is there like,
it's going to be different for each situation? So like I said, if the man really thinks the woman's out of his league, it can build up really quick. And it's also the basis of why do guys keep coming back to a strip club?
I don't know. What
That's
is that?
the same thing. It's because it's building up.
Right.
It's building up, but he's not satiated.
Right. Okay. So as long as there's no sex in the champagne room.
Exactly.
So, I mean, do you like, as a rule of thumb, I mean, obviously marriage is what I, believe, but Steve Harvey, I think, is 90 days or something. Is there like a general amount of time that it takes to build up? Can it happen in one night? Like if your girl is just so out of your league, you're like, could it build up that fast? Or
well, I don't know. So somebody like you who has been mentally preparing to fall in love, it's going to happen quicker. So somebody else that is more timid, that has been hurt in the past, it can take a lot longer. Now, the research shows that it's different in different countries. And the funny part was that people in northern countries, like Lithuania and colder countries like that, tend to fall in love quicker. And it may have to do with the climate, because they don't have time to really date as much.
they want to cuddle as quickly as possible because they're cold.
Exactly. But they can fall in love in like 60 days. And I think Steve Harvey's right. It's somewhere around 90 days that we see it.
Right. Okay. So this is a question from a viewer, and she said, what drives us to fall in love gradually in spite of all the flaws we see in the person? That's curious to me. She said, what makes a person love another when logically it may not make obvious sense, or they even originally didn't like the other person?
All right. So if you're going through that, you may have fallen in love. So when you fall in love, we see a deactivation of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that judges the other person. That's why they say love is blind. So you can't really see what's going on. Now, falling in love, that phase lasts for about 2 years. So if you've ever known people that go like every 2 years into a new relationship, they're going through that pattern of deactivation and get their brain back and get out of the relationship. But that's why you get that thing like, I know I shouldn't like this, but I find it really cute right now. But then like 2 years later, you're like, oh my God, this is so annoying. Why did I ever think it was cute?
So what can you do to keep the love, like keep that loving feeling after the 2 years? Is there any?
That's where you have to make the decision, because that's where we see the change in the brain activity. So when you're falling in love, a lot of the activity is in the primitive part of the brain. And once it starts moving to the frontal cortex, that's the thinking part of the brain, that's where you start making decisions. And when you make that decision that I love this person, and so certain things that bother you. So I'll give you an example. When I was one of the things I had with my husband was he would leave his underwear on the floor. And I was like, oh man, he left his underwear on the floor. This is disrespectful, my brain, right? So I'm like building a case for this. And my friend was like, look, you got to rethink this. I'm like, I know. Yeah, I tell people that, but you hate to hear it when you get it back to you, right? You got to rethink this. And I'm like, okay, how do I think about it differently? When I pick it up, that was my act of love. So I was like, okay, I'm being loving today. I'm picking it up. And I made that decision so it became an opportunity for me to be loving by picking it up.
Gotcha.
And the funny thing is he doesn't leave it on the floor anymore. I don't know why it changed.
You didn't have to bitch. You just
Nope.
stopped.
Yep.
Huh. Yeah. It's kind of like reframing it, right? Just
Yes.
kind of looking at it from a little bit different angle.
Mm-hmm.
So how many books do you have now? Is it 3?
No, just the 2.
2. Okay. It's 2 books. And it's
my first book was Broken Picker Fixer, and they republished it under From Heartbreak to Heart's Desire.
okay.
So that's why that's out. You can't.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Century Recovery Press published that, and you can't get Broken Picker Fixer. You can get the second one new. You can't get the old one anymore. You can get it for resale.
Who are each of those books for?
They're for women.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like what kind of woman? So a woman, Broken Picker Fixer is just somebody that wants to understand why they keep choosing the wrong kind of men.
It's for women that want to stop picking the wrong men.
And then what about the men chase, women choose?
So that can actually be men or women, but it's for people that really want to understand how love works on a scientific level.
Okay. All right, ladies and men, go check it out. They can get those on Amazon.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So in addition to your speaking engagements, you also have a course, right?
No,
You
I
not?
have that YouTube channel.
Oh, you teach a course. So do you teach a college course?
Yes, well, I teach regular biology. Nobody wants to take that.
Okay, all right. What about one-on-one consultations? Do you still do those?
I do them periodically, but yes, if somebody's interested, I can do those. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to put a link to your website. Is there any other services that you offer you want to mention?
We are doing the Is He Committed? The test. So if there's anybody, right now we're shooting in Fort Lauderdale, but if there's anybody that's interested, that wants to know if a man is committed to a woman, it only works for heterosexual relationships. Let me know. So if there's a form on my website they can fill out and we can do it.
Now, will they have to agree to being filmed in order to do it? Is it like going to be like a reality show or, oh, I mean, it's going to be on YouTube, right? Is that the only place?
Yeah, it's gonna be on YouTube, right?
Got it. And that's it, Dawn. Go ahead.
It's tastefully done. We're not going to be like ambush
Cheaters.
TV, right? Exactly. So it's a volunteer. He takes the test. It's a lab test, so we have to send it off, and then when the results come back, we announce it on the YouTube channel.
Cool. All right. Y'all heard it. Go check her out, dawnmasler.com. I'll put the link in the show
Dawn
notes.
Masler Biggie.
Dawn Masler, is that the website now? Is Dawn
Yeah.
Masler Biggie?
Yep. Dawn Masler Biggie.
Biggie.
Yep.
Biggie Smalls.
Yep.
All right. So tell everybody, is there any other places they can find you on social media?
On Facebook too. Be my friend.
All right. And it's
Facebook,
Dawn
Instagram.
Masler, Love Biologist, right?
Dawn Masler Biggie. I changed it all
Oh,
to
Dawn Masler Biggie. Okay. Is that a fan page?
there is the Dawn Masler fan page, but right now I still you can just be my friend on Facebook right now.
You going to do any other TED Talks or anything?
I don't have any, I took the summer off, so mentally I'm like, I don't have anything planned right now, but I have something in the works. I just can't really talk about it yet. There's a possibility.
Okay.
Something that's happening. I'm hoping that happens.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming back on. This is always great to catch up with you, hear what you got going. Again,
Thanks
don't
for
forget
having
about
me.
me. Yeah, don't forget about me when that test comes out and goes public. I think that's going to be a huge.
I'll let you know. Look for investors.
All righty. Sounds good. Thanks, Dawn.
All right. Thank you.